Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Obamacare is dead, or is it? Obamacare has been overturned by a Texas judge, or was it? Well, the answer to that is Obamacare is still alive. Obamacare is still in play. Obamacare, but we do have a ruling from a judge that says Obamacare is unconstitutional. What does that really mean? Hasn't this been in existence? Has Obamacare been in existence now for about 8 years? Isn't it now the law of the land? Can we still be arguing about this? Well, the one thing about Republicans, the GOP, and the plutocracy, the portion of the plutocracy that wants this thing gone, is that they are relentless. Folks, if you are just joining us, please make sure to share this program on your wall. I implore you to do so. Many of the things that we discuss here are not necessarily the things that you're going to hear on mainstream media. And one of the reasons why is because of they have to have their own loyalties to you know whom, and that is to those who advertise on the system. So please, folks, if you're just joining us, please share this program on your website. Please share this show program on your Facebook page, your first Facebook wall, your Twitter, your Tumblr, your Snapchat, your Instagram, everywhere that you have the opportunity to do so. Please do so, because that is how we are going to make a difference. That is how we are going to keep folks informed as they should. Because if you're dependent on the mainstream media right now, today they are talking about the judge overturning the ruling, a little bit that is, but how much have they really done? How much have we been hearing about Obamacare over the last several, God knows, several weeks, several months, several years? Not much. And the reason why is, everybody's obsessed with Donald Trump and Russia. Everybody's obsessed with Donald Trump and everything else. Every tweet that Donald Trump puts out, and none of those tweets help your health care. None of those tweets help you at all. None of those tweets puts food on the table. None of those tweets get your kid a job. None of those tweets actually give any compensation or any relief for your student loan debt. None of that happens with the way things are. So, folks, if you're just joining us, please share the program. And before I get started, I usually wait before I go ahead and ask folks to remember to support the program. But please remember to support Politics Done Right. To support Politics Done Right, just go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Again, go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. For those of you who subscribe to Politics Done Right, you will have full access to our new book that's coming out as we put it online. How to Make America Utopia. That book will be every chapter that I write will be online, and you'll be able to read it online as soon as it comes out. And when the full book comes out, of course, it is yours. So please go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right, or if you want to subscribe, if you want to go ahead and help the show out as well, go to politicsdoneright.com and just hit that donate button or whatever to help the show out. Now, going back to the show. Before I get to the show, I want to play I support 100% the legalization of weed, the legalization of hemp, the legalization of everything. Guess what? Republicans are now on the boards of the person who was the Speaker of the House is now on the board of directors of a marijuana company. Oh, the plutocracy has finally seen that we are going to make some money now. I hope those young folks that have been been pushing this stuff for a long time. Get involved and don't allow the big companies to make all the money from weed. After all, for those of you who are concerned about weed, let me tell you, I don't think any automobile crashes or any deaths has been attributed to weed, but I think alcohol killed over 30,000 people every year, if not quite a bit more. I could be wrong on my numbers. I'm pretty sure somebody can call me out on that. But what I want to do is play a video to hear, and this is for mostly Texans here, but it's something that you should be doing all over the country as well. And that is not, in January, a lot of legislatures are coming into fruition, coming into existence, coming into pass. And we need to make sure and identify those Congress people who we need to address to get them to legalize weed in your particular state. Legalize marijuana in your particular state. Legalize ganja in your particular state. So here's one of the organizations here in town that I want to go ahead and put out this promo. Here it goes.
What's going on, everybody? Free the weed in Texas. Are you ready for this Monday challenge? I got about a minute, so I'm going to spit it right at you. I need you to call Representative Theory Sean. She's in District 146. That's Southwest Houston near 610 and the Main Street area. I need you to call this number and let her know that you support the full legalization bill here in Texas. She's looking at this bill and reviewing it and seeing if she'd like to file it. We need this bill filed, so call her. Her number is 512-463-0518. Again, that's 512-463-0518. Call that number and please politely tell them that you support the full legalization bill here in Texas. Let's free the weed.
Okay, folks. So, service announcement for a friendly organization. And we're asking you to support these folks and here in Texas and all over the country. Anybody that has anybody from any state who wants to urge their people from any of these states to do this, just send a video, send something to me, and I'll get it out there. Because here is the deal: there are too many people suffering for using this particular herb, while others using heavy substances aren't. And I consider alcohol a very heavy substance. And by the way, I don't drink particularly. Every now and then I may have a beer socially, but I don't drink as a rule of thumb. But you know what? That doesn't have me wanting others not to drink. I really don't care. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't do weed. I don't do any of that. Doesn't mean I have anything against anybody who does it, nor do I think it is anything, I don't do marijuana. So I really don't care. I just don't do it. Right? There's a lot of things I do that you do, or a lot of things that you do I don't do. Then it's just one of those things, right? So like I said, I'm for the 100% legalization of marijuana. Actually, I'm quite a bit more than that. I'm for the 100% legalization of any of these drugs that put people in jail, and I believe it should be treated as a medical issue, and likewise an intoxication issue. If you're doing something under the influence, then castigate you for doing something under the influence, but do not make it illegal. And for all those people who think otherwise, many times we find that those folks opposing mostly generally on the right. You have to ask yourself if you really truly believe in freedom. Don't you think everybody should have the freedom to do whatever the hell they want with their own bodies? I do. Like I said, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any of that, but that's just a personal choice. Do I hold it against anybody who does? Absolutely not. My daughter drinks, my wife drinks, I don't. So what's the deal? Anyhow, so the deal is this, folks. Please support whatever state you're in, whatever county you're in. Anytime anything comes up about legalizing any of these drugs right now that are putting folks in jail unnecessarily, support them. Remember, the stigma that there are people with convictions right now, and there's a stigma attached to a person who was convicted of drugs and served time for doing marijuana, and he has a stigma on his record and nobody wants to hire him. But you have a drunk out there that had a DUI or something like that, and somehow corporations, when they're hiring, they don't look at that with the same kind of stigma. Psychological, folks. Remember, I always talk about indoctrination. Remember, I always talk about indoctrination, folks. That is what we're talking about. That's indoctrination, to think that somehow marijuana is different than anything else. Okay, going to the program today. Today's program title is Obamacare Overturned. What does it really mean? Subtitle: If Republicans are unable to attain their goals via coercion at the ballot box, and we know what's happening in South Carolina. We know what happened. I don't remember if it's North Carolina or South Carolina. We know what happened here in Texas. We have a whole lot of irregularities at the ballot box, and you know, I always talk about people projecting, right? There are a lot of folks who've been sometimes tell me, Egberto, they'll say something on me, and I'll be like, are you really talking about me? I think you are projecting. We have a lot of people, specifically on the right, project about voter fraud. Oh, those brown people are coming out here and they're illegally voting, and they're putting those Democrats in there, or they're putting those folks in there. First of all, I want you to guys to think about something, folks. Do you really think an undocumented worker who is pretty much trying to stay under the radar is going to really attempt to vote and run the risk of getting caught? It is so illogical. There are so many of these things that are so illogical that we allow ourselves to think it, and we have to ask ourselves, why do we allow ourselves to think it? What intrinsic within our mind, what is it within our mind that make us gullible to accept something so arcane, something that makes so little sense? It is not about voting. You think about what it really is. And when you solve that internally, when you get rid of that chain, you'll see how quickly things light up and we can all start working together, because that is what I'm all about. I'm a left-wing liberal progressive, but I love everybody and I want to work with everybody. But we first have to free our minds. And when we can free our minds, then we can have a true exchange of ideas. Then I can sit down, you can sit down and speak to anybody, and you know what? Minds change. Continuing. Title: If Republicans are unable to attain their goals via coercion at the ballot box, they resort to the judiciary. And the reason why they resort to the judiciary is generally one person, two people, or nine, right? The Texas judge that struck down Obamacare likely hurt the GOP. And you know why? Because they don't really want, they just want to have the argument. They don't want to have the resolution. The argument continues to bring votes. Remember what Donald Trump did? Oh, brown people are invading America. And he spent millions of Americans' dollars, your tax dollars, to send the military at the border and make sure that the media is there. And why is he doing that? He's doing that because he wants to get folks scared. And all those folks in rural America, I feel so sorry for them. They were so scared. They're not cosmopolitan folk who, they think that over that hill, over that tree line, that there's this invasion of brown people going to be coming into their neighborhoods, and that's going to be attacking them. That's going to be hurting them. You know, I have a lot of people. I'm a progressive. I'm a liberal. A lot of us, folks like to just run out there and say, oh, those damn people in those rural towns are racist. And my thing is not that. Look, if I walk into that town as a stranger, as a black dude, yeah, their racial stereotypes and all of that sort of stuff is going to come out. But I can guarantee you one thing. If I sit down and break some bread and have some coffee with them, by the end of the day, even though they're going to still have that in the mandumbula or whatever you call that, they may still be racist back here. Intellectually, they won't be. And you see, that's what you hit first. Intellectually. You hit somebody intellectually. And even though the urges remain there, I mean, a woman sat down in a Starbucks one time and she told me, Egberto, I have some of these thoughts sometimes, you know, and I wonder where they come from. And I said, you know where they come from. That's culture. But the fact of the matter that you could come to me and say you have those thoughts, that you had enough faith in me that I'm not going to go berserk with you when you look at me and tell me you have those thoughts, and then you can say, but how can I resolve them? and we sit down and talk, and I look at you and I tell you, well, you need to improve on the folks that you hang around, so that defensive trait that all human beings, all animals, all vertebrates have, you can get rid of that. I treat it as an illness, not as something intrinsic to somebody's being, because it happens to everybody. It's not a white thing. Now, the ones in this country, that's where the power lies. So therefore, that one was more coercive, right? So when you start looking at things from a scientific point of view, and I know I'm talking Obamacare, but every now and then I get on my rants and I have to come out with what my thought process is telling me, hoping that we can get some sort of a dialogue going. And folks, you know, this is a call-in show, and you can shut me up at any time by calling 646-716-5812. You can always shut me up by calling 646-716-5812 because you have precedence. You guys have precedence. You can call into this show and change the direction of this show if you want to. And if you doubt it, try it. But anyhow, so that's what I'm saying. That Trump sent all these things to the border, and people were so ready to take it. And the only reason Beto did not win Texas, everybody like, oh, when Donald Trump came to Texas, he hurt Ted Cruz. Oh no, he helped Ted Cruz. He didn't come here to change people in Houston, Harris County. He came to change people in all the surrounding rural areas, and boy, did he scare them to death. And they went to the polls. And we want people to go to the polls, but we want people to go to the polls and vote for the right reasons and vote for their own interests. But man, those people were scared. Man, them brown people was going to be coming on. They're going to be invading, and they're going to be, oh man, they're going to be coming into my neighborhood. And you know, we have a small amount of them right now. And if too many of them come out now, and you know, they're going to be coming to attack us. And you know, they're rapists, and they're rapists, and they have diseases, and those of us in Houston say like, how can they be so stupid to think that? Folks, there are people who are right here in Houston who think that, right? So what we have to do is start changing the way we approach things. I try to be a little bit more, it's not that I don't get mad on these issues. It's not that I don't get upset on these issues. It's that I understand these issues, and I understand the psychological makeup of folk and how that is addressed. But anyhow, continue Obamacare. We start. A Texas judge overturned the entire ACA. What exactly does it mean? Does it mean a return to the wild, wild west where insurers took advantage of customers? If it is upheld, that is exactly what it means. All is not lost. Republicans never had an answer to health care, just obstruction. You know, they just needed the health care as a method of obstruction to keep having people come and vote for them, saying this stuff is hurting you, even though it's not. You tell somebody that they have health care, they love it. You tell them it's Obamacare, oh, I hate it. Tells you something, right? If it were to be upheld, what is the solution? We would simply watch their market-based solutions wither and burn. But before I go into the blog of the week, I want to just read something real quickly that was very disturbing. One of our great listeners sent a message to me saying, Egberto, did you see this? And I said, see what? And she, well, I mean, no, that's not how it happened. She left a message on Facebook with a particular thing in Texas with a teacher, and I got to tell you, it was quite disturbing. It was very disturbing to see in America that something like this could actually happen. And here it goes. The Intercept reported as follows. A children's speech pathologist who has worked for the last 9 years with developmentally disabled, autistic, and speech-impaired elementary school students in Austin, Texas, has been told that she can no longer work with the public school district after she refused to sign an oath vowing that she does not and will not engage in a boycott of Israel or otherwise tackle any action that is intended to inflict economic harm on that foreign nation. A lawsuit on her behalf was filed early Monday morning in a federal court in the Western District of Texas, alleging a violation of her First Amendment right. But you know what is so funny? The article pointed out that that is not something that is, that sounds like a very Texas thing, right? But believe it or not, there are many states who have provisions in their laws like that, including states that you would never believe have provisions in their laws like that. And some of those states include California, believe it or not. That tip was given to me by Kathleen. Kathleen is one of our great listeners. Kathleen, thank you very much for that one. I kind of went blank for a while there. Anyhow, folks, you know what time it is. The blog of the week, I didn't write this one because there was one so well done. To put it bluntly, it was better done than I would have written it because, again, it was written by two professionals who this is what they do. This is all they do. And when I read it this morning, I said, you know what? This is my blog of the week. So, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, the title of the blog post, and it can be found at history. I have it on my site, egbertowillies.com. It's also can be found at the History Network as well. But anyhow, the title of the blog post. Oh, what I have to go ahead and modify that. I didn't give the History folks credit, History Network credit. I gave the two women credit, but I didn't give them. And it's their thing. This is not mine. This is theirs. Why the Texas ruling on Obamacare is on shaky legal ground is the title of the piece. And it was written by Simon F. Heater from West Virginia University and Valerie Blake as well from West Virginia University. And here it goes. A Texas judge has ruled that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. For now, his decision has no immediate effect except to toss another firebomb at a law that has helped 20 plus million people gain insurance and expanded insurance for almost all Americans by such things as requiring insurers to cover pre-existing conditions. Listen well, folks. This is very important. Based on our expertise as health policy scholars, we argue that the ACA is well-settled law by now. This ruling will likely not undo the law. It does, however, add more uncertainty to the ACA while also showing how much Republicans continue to be willing to fight to destroy the law. How did we get this Texas verdict? Republicans in Congress spent much of 2017 seeking to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. After repeated failed attempts, they celebrated a victory with the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The tax bill included the repeal of the ACA's individual shared responsibility penalty, or the penalty imposed on individuals who failed to purchase qualified insurance coverage. Health policy experts agreed that this would destabilize the individual insurance market without destroying the ACA, and indeed, enrollment in the ACA insurance marketplaces has been decidedly lower this year. And plus, he didn't advertise, okay? Trump decided he was going to advertise very little for this. Yet, millions of Americans continue to enroll. Let me make sure I got that right. Yes, millions of Americans continue to enroll, and a number of states are moving toward expanding Medicaid. Emboldened by the legislative success of GOP tax reform, however, 20 states led by Texas and Wisconsin renewed their efforts to have the ACA declared unconstitutional. They got their wish. Texas Judge Reed O'Connor struck down the Affordable Care Act as unconstitutional, not just the mandate, but in its entirety. Politics heavily shaped this case. Republican-led states thought a friendly judge in a Texas district court to yet again challenge the constitutionality of the ACA, and California took over the defense of the ACA when the Department of Justice refused to defend its own law. While many experts anticipated that Judge O'Connor would rule against the ACA, legal experts from both sides of the aisle were baffled by his legal reasoning and the departing from well-established legal precedent. Judge O'Connor addressed three issues: standing constitutionality of the individual mandate, and a legal principle called severability, that is, should the rest of the ACA stand if the individual mandate is held to be constitutional. Okay, first, O'Connor agreed with the plaintiffs that they did have standing to bring the case, so they could go ahead and litigate the case. The plaintiffs argued that the individual mandate injures their constitutional rights by forcing them to buy health insurance. Yet, ironically, it is the elimination of the tax penalty that prompted this lawsuit. Okay. Wait, let me refinish that paragraph, then I get to it. O'Connor suggested that people will feel nonetheless beholden to follow the law even without the penalty. We find the argument that an unenforced law can cause harm is absurd and merits serious consideration. Next, O'Connor held that the individual mandate is unconstitutional. In NFIB versus Sebelius, the Supreme Court upheld the individual mandate as a tax, with Congress reducing the individual mandate penalty to 0 in the 2017 tax bill. The plaintiffs in the Texas case argue it no longer functions as such. Yet, we think that once more, Judge O'Connor ignored reasonable arguments. For one, California argued there are still ways in which a mandate functions as a tax, as some unpaid funds will still be collected in the future. Additionally, many related provisions of the ACA remain intact. So here's the deal. Republicans have to go to their constituents and say, Obamacare was legal according to the Supreme Court because the individual mandate was ruled a tax. We as Republicans never had a replacement for you. We never had any laws written to make sure you had, if you had bad health or whatever, that you'd be covered. We never did any of that. All we did was drop the mandate to 0. In other words, the tax that you would have paid if you don't buy insurance went to 0. Good. But other Republicans, it immediately says, okay, if the tax is 0, it means it's not a tax. And since it was ruled a tax by the Supreme Court, the entire bill is moot, void, everything, because the bill is dependent on there being an individual mandate. That's a false argument, right? But that's what he accepted. But they're admitting that they reduced the tax to 0 so they could bring a lawsuit and said there is no mandate, and as such, you have some reason to go ahead and say the law is unconstitutional. But already you're saying there's no severability between the mandate and the rest of the law. That was already taken care of in the Supreme Court, supposedly. But who knows? Okay, while it's important that the individual mandate also does not render the ACA completely worthless, the mandate which has been used as a stick to enforce compliance may be gone, but carrots like subsidies to purchase insurance remain and will keep many people in the insurance market. Of course, you don't need the mandate to know that just because if you go ahead and get this policy, you get yearly exams free of charge. Forget about deductibles or anything. There are services within the policies that you get irrespective of a deductible, because everybody says, oh, the deductibles are unaffordable. We can't afford deductibles, so we can't use it. That is true. The deductibles are ridiculously high, but there are a lot of services that are given at a discount. When you go to see a doctor, the doctors, if you have a policy as opposed to not having a policy, is a lot less expensive than otherwise. The only time you really get into that deductible is when you really have real sickness and procedures that forces you to do that. And in effect, what it acts like is a modified catastrophic policy. That's what I always say if you want to be honest. That is one of the reasons we need Medicare for all. But what I've been saying a long time ago is this ruling, I hope, stands, because then the only solution out of this is going to be some sort of Medicare for all, because they have to come up with something quickly. And the only thing that we know that works right now, that is in existence, is Medicare. Extend it. Later on, we can talk about getting rid of the 20% copay, 20% in Medicare and the donut hole. We get rid of all of that, and we institute HR 676. We'll talk about that some other time. Okay, so what's next? California has indicated that it intends to appeal the matter to the Fifth Circuit Court, which covers Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. But it is possible that Judge O'Connor may sit on the case for a period longer than that. We believe that if the Fifth Circuit is reasonable, it will overturn the verdict. At the same time, another suit filed in the District Court in Maryland asked that the ACA be deemed constitutional and that the complete law remain intact. Actions of these two courts will determine whether there is sufficient uncertainty or danger to the ACA to merit the Supreme Court's review. Meanwhile, While heartburn medicine sales may have risen and Twitter has gone alight, in practice, nothing changes. Judge O'Connor did not issue any injunction to stop the enforcement of the ACA, and for now, the Trump administration has indicated that it will continue to enforce the law until ultimately settled. Of course, they're going to enforce the law. They have a choice. Now, ultimately, the weakness of plaintiff's case means this litigation will likely end, whenever it does, with the ACA largely intact. But in the meantime, uncertainty and confusion will reign, and politicians will spin well-worn narratives that the ACA is fundamentally flawed and unlawful. But here's a part of the people's piece that I think is the most important that they wrote. Yeah, we're saying we think it'll be overturned, all of that. But given that we also thought that Trump could never get elected. Don't forget that. We also thought Trump could never possibly get elected. And today we have President Trump. So these two great professors wrote a piece at the end of their document says, what if the ruling is upheld? And this is where I want you to listen attentively. If the ruling is ultimately upheld and the ACA really is dead for good, then the ACA is really dead for good. The changes for the American healthcare system and every American would be dramatic. Of course, most directly affected would be those Americans who obtain coverage through either the Medicaid expansion or in the insurance marketplaces. The popular provision that allows young adults to stay on their parents' plan would also be undone. So your kid, 26 years old, under 26, can't be on your plan anymore. Any large-scale changes would cause dramatic harm to the entire U.S. healthcare system and affect each and every American, whether they rely on employer-sponsored insurance, other private insurance, or Medicaid and Medicare. Even 8 years after its passage, many Americans do not fully grasp the sheer reach of ACA provisions. Look no further than its more than 1,000 pages as evidence of its depth and scope. Gone would be relatively minor, albeit important provisions like requiring fast food restaurants to post calorie counts, reviewing insurance premiums, increases by regulators, and taxing tanning beds. More crucially, gone would be protections for Americans with the pre-existing conditions. Gone would also be provisions that eliminate annual and lifetime restrictions by insurers and the requirement for insurers to provide a minimum level of benefits, including mental health, substance abuse, and emergency room services. Gone would also be the filling of the Medicare Part D donut hole that hurt many seniors. Gone would be provisions that combat fraud and abuse in Medicaid and Medicare. Gone would be provisions for coal miners suffering from black lung and their survivors. So these coal miners who have been very Trumpist folk, their own guy would have made their lives untenable. Okay? Gone would be the efforts to improve provider quality medical innovation and data collecting efforts to reduce health disparities. The list keeps growing. It keeps going. As we stated before, we believe the ACA should be settled law, both in the courts of law and public opinion. It should also finally be settled in the court of politics. In our view, this frivolous lawsuit and the equally frivolous ruling should not distract us from the serious work ahead in addressing the inadequacies of the American health care system. Now, who is Simon Heder? He's assistant professor of political science at West Virginia University, and Valerie Blake is the associate professor of health law, West Virginia University. All right, folks, listen to me. The law, again, is still in existence. And by the way, you can give us a call at 646-716-5812 if you want to add to the discussion on this particular issue. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I would love to hear from you. Now, I wrote another piece, right, yesterday, and I got a whole lot of flack from a whole lot of Democrats when I wrote the piece, because yesterday Chuck Schumer went on Meet the Press, and Chuck Todd does some silly things, and this time Chuck Todd tried to corner him to ask, do you support Medicare for all, right? And Chuck Todd, or not Chuck Todd, but Schumer went around and around and around. You know what? I should play that. Let's see if I think I still have that video. So I should find that video and play it. But Chuck Schumer went around and around, and what I'm going to do is if I have the video, what I'm going to do, it looks like I do have, let's see if I have it here. If I do have the video, what I'm going to do is I want to play it first, because it was rather upsetting, and I said as much in the in the corresponding blog post that I wrote. And unfortunately, many Democrats who saw what I wrote weren't too enthused or happy. I want to, and then I'm going to tie it in with our story today on Obamacare. But let me let you hear this. Go ahead. Let's play this.
Here's what Adam Green, founder of Progressive Change Campaign Committee, writes. He says, Democrats need to put a bright North Star in the sky for 2020 voters, showing what Democrats would do with more power and making clear that we're moving toward Medicare for all as a big part of a 2020 electoral strategy. It seems pretty clear that the presidential nominee, whoever it is, will support Medicare for all. You think it's time for Democrats to push this?
Look, Democrats are for universal access to health care from one end of the party to the other. We want more people covered, everyone covered. We want better health care at a lower cost. People have different views as to how to get there. Many are for Medicare for all. Some are for Medicare buy-in. Some are Medicare over 55. Some are Medicaid buy-in. Some are public option. We're going to have to do a lot more on health care. It will be a major issue in 2020. And I believe Democrats will coalesce around the best way to get the best health care for the most people.
I know you're very careful about putting your view here now that you're the leader of the Senate conference there. Where are you going to support Medicare for all, Senator Schumer?
Look, as I said, there are lots of different routes. I'm going to support a plan that can pass and that can provide the best, cheapest health care for all Americans.
Okay, all of that sounds great. Any Republican could have said that. Any Democrat could have said that. But we've been there. We've done that. We all want universal health care. There's only, at this point, mathematically speaking, and I may repeat myself to some of you that are regular listeners, but I must say this: there is only one option left. It's one option left, and it's a mathematically absolute option, and that is a single payer system, and we can call it single payer Medicare for all, single payer universal access, whatever you want to call it. But it has to be a single payer where the payer is not for profit. Because in paying a health care bill, profit becomes an expense. We have the government right now issuing Social Security checks, right? My question to every single Social Security recipient: how difficult is that? That the government knows how much it's going to pay you, and it pays you without fail once a month. It works. It works efficiently. It works cheaply. Second, therefore, when it comes to a healthcare bill, let's forget about the doctors, the hospitals, and the drugs for now. Let's forget about it, because we need to hit them up as well. But let's forget about that for now. There is currently about anywhere from an 18 to 20% overhead. Some say 30% if you go between the lines that they know how to fidget in accounting. 20%. In other words, to have all these different insurance companies, it costs that insurance company 20% of all the premiums that are paid to it to pay that bill. So the doctors submit bills to many different insurance companies, depending on who you are. And that insurance companies then decide if they're going to pay the bill, and they pay the bill. They take 20 cents on every dollar simply to pay the bill. We're not talking about anything about service or whatever. Therefore, the government, just like it has a Social Security computer system to print checks, they can have a Medicare for all system to pay the bills that are submitted to the government from doctors and hospitals and drug companies and everything else. One company pays the bill. We don't have to pay billions to shareholders. We don't have to pay billions to executives of insurance companies. We don't have to pay billions of dollars for each of those insurance companies to go out there and advertise to beg for your business. We're talking about billions of dollars of savings that then can be used to cover those Americans that are not insured. It is really, folks, that simple. What are the downsides? They're going to start talking about fraud. Okay? The same people that are working for those insurance companies right now to subjugate fraud is the same people now that the government can hire to handle fraud. What's the difference and why is it more efficient? Numero uno, because we don't have to pay the shareholders. We don't have to pay the high price executives. We don't have to pay for advertising. We don't have any capital costs for multiple databases, multiple computer systems. All of that's gone. So maybe the overhead is, let's say now 3 to 5%. It's probably going to be less than that because of economies of scale. So just the savings that we get from there is efficient. Now people say, well, what about how exactly do people pay for it if we get rid of insurance companies? With a tax. A tax is not a bad word. When the Powell Manifesto and all these things came out, they had to do several things. They had to do several things to make the middle class work against themselves. And this is what they did. They taught you that taxes are that tax is a bad word. They also taught you that unions are bad words or is a bad word. Why did they do that? Both of those things are middle class centric. Let me explain how. Taxes, the more you make, the more you pay. So if we have a whole bunch of poor people who don't pay a lot of taxes, thinking taxes are bad, you're not helping yourself. You may save $10, they save 10 million. So they make you think that taxes is a bad word, even though you don't pay a lot of taxes. The vast majority of Americans don't pay a lot of taxes, okay? The vast majority of Americans pay very little in income tax. You want to know where they pay a lot of taxes? Sales taxes for the states. They pay a lot of taxes and fees. Places where the taxes are hidden. That can be handled in other ways, of course. I mean, we could always have states do more progressive type taxing, but no states don't like that because progressive tax hits the masses while income tax hits mostly on the wealthy. Okay, so they got you thinking badly about taxes. They want you to think taxes are bad. But taxes don't really affect you all that much compared to how it affects them. And the other thing they want you to think is that unions bad. Why? Because with the unions, you have enough power to fight them for higher wages, to fight them to give you more benefits, to fight them to get your share of the pie so that we don't have the inequality that we have today. The reason we have the inequality we have today is that we do not have enough people fighting the powers so they can pay you a pittance and take all the wealth, which is what they do. Productivity has zoomed up. Your wages have not. Your wages should have gone up proportionally with productivity. As we made more things and we became richer, you should have become more richer too. But keeping the minimum wage at $7, it's funny. They don't mind keeping the minimum wage at $7.25 for decades. But if they don't get growth in the stock market, they go into a panic. They want to see growth every year. But they don't want to see your wage grow. It's a built-in evil. So they made you think badly about taxes and unions, but mostly here about taxes. So yes, if it turns out, once the government is, and by the way, government is we the people, and oh, government never do anything well. Don't they pay your Social Security very well? Ask every Social Security recipient how many, once they're set up, ask them if they ever have to do anything again. It's smooth running. It's all on autopilot. Same can be with paying a medical bill. We do not need insurance companies at all. They provide no services. They create services in order to minimize their payment to ensure that they maximize profits at your expense. We don't think that's a tumor, so we'll sit back and wait. so we won't pay for a biopsy. We don't think that's a problem, so we'll just wait. We think we're not going to pay for that surgery, and you go into arbitration and they keep that drug out long enough. Why? Because you die. That is a business of insurance. That is a business of health insurance. One, to deny you service as much as possible to maximize their income for their shareholders and executives. And two, to hope that if you're sick, you die. And I'm not kidding about that. I'm not saying that to be funny. Their goal is if you're too darn sick, they don't want to give you enough if they can assure that you die. If they can give you 6 more months of life, that's not good for them. It may be good for your loved ones to be able to have you 6 more months so that they can learn about their history. In that 6 months, that 6 additional months that you got alive, you could have taught your grandchildren things that they would not know if you die now. Extend the reach. There are a lot of things that extra life. But to the insurance company, hell no. You bet you're dying, so might as well die now. And I'm not kidding when I'm saying these things. It's a cost ratio. Cost life ratio. And that's how they think. So therefore we don't need them. We don't need insurance companies. We just go ahead and have the government, just like it can handle Social Security and Medicare, have them pay the bill. Later on, we have to get tough on drug companies and on hospitals and on developers of drug and medical equipment. Why? Because of thievery. The NIH, National Institute of Health, they subsidize, they develop, they fund a lot of early research on drugs. And when the drug looks like it's going to be viable, then it gets turned over to private enterprise. And private enterprise then markets that drug. They further test that drug and market that drug. But guess what? When the big time profits and the overcharging comes in, does the government make back its research dollars? Shouldn't at least the profits from this drug go back into the government coffers for the amount it expended to develop the prototype of the drug in the first place, plus more? And why plus more? Because of all the failed prototypes that the government had? Isn't that the fair thing to do? But no. They have their lobbyists that insurers. Once the drug is theirs, it's theirs, and they can market and charge whatever they want. And the next question is this. How do they price drugs? They price drugs under a concept of whatever the market will bear. What that means is we'll sock it to you, because if you're dying, you'll pay anything for a drug. If you're in pain or sick, you'll pay anything for a drug. So they'll charge you whatever the market will bear. That's evil. And it's not only that is evil, that is something that we need to take out of their purview. It is something that, and the other thing is, we should make sure that medicine can never go up at a higher rate than inflation. Otherwise, it is just gouging. Medicine should never be able to go up with insurance. So basically, those are the kind of issues. But anyway, it's coming time that I need to go ahead and start talking to you guys and see what you have to say. You can always call also. I mean, like I always tell folks, if you want to interrupt me at any time, just call 646-716-5812. We can handle, you know what? I'm paying for this thing that allows us to handle 50 calls at a time. And I have a secret that I'm sending out in my email blast. We're going to have some other methods of communicating with you guys for off channel, that is, when we're not on our regular standard 3 o'clock time. We'll do the 3 o'clock show every 5 days a week as usual, but we'll have some for our subscribers. We're going to have some treats, and I'm going to be releasing that in a newsletter probably today later on about the different things that we have planned for 2019. So, but anyhow, let me get to you guys and talk to you great folk. And that is what I really think of all of you. Anybody who's spending the time to be here or spending the time to listen to it if you're listening to it on a podcast. Love you all. Thank you so kindly for being here. Know that I hold the uttermost respect that you're giving me the honor of listening. I'd like you to also give me the honor of sharing and making sure other folks see these things, because I don't think a lot of times we go over them as we should. But I am honored that you're here. I really am. Let's see now. We have Kathleen. Wait, I don't think it started with Kathleen. Let me back up some. Okay. All right, Senor Michael Rudnin, Politics Done Right. Oh, thank you very much for doing that, Michael, for me. And we have Ashley Miller. Thank you for as far as playing the video on the weed. Massachusetts passed legislation by ballot in 2016. Close to 2 years later, 3 pot shops. All right, so you're selling pot in Massachusetts. I think it's a good thing. All right, Michael Rudnin, projection and transference are the favorite tools of the right. You're absolutely right. Accusing your opposition of the worst that you yourself were guilty of. You're so right about that, Mr. Rudnin. My thoughts on racism is that it is tied to poverty, specifically the poor. People have to look for someone to blame. That is part of it as well. There are some cultural issues to it. Incorrectly assigning the blame to minorities rather than the wealthy who have drained the economy. I wonder if the progressive passed Social Security for all, aka universal basic income, and eliminate poverty, would racism go away? Racism is a slow thing to go away because there are 2 parts to it. There's an intellectual part and then there's an animal part to racism, right? The animal part is people that look different, and racism doesn't have to be a black-white racism or a black Chinese or a white Chinese, or when I mean white, and I mean when I say Chinese, you know what I'm talking about, and or whatever. What happens with racism, and this is a few things that I learned, is in our olden days, before we had societies, the way we differentiated ourselves is things that look different, right? And difference can come in colors. I mean, even white folk can be different. One set of white folk can be different than another set of white folk. And in the old days, they'll be different tribe, and they themselves would have racism between the two of them, right? Because they look different and they knew they're from different tribes or whatever. And that goes with everybody, you know, with the whole thing. So there are 2 parts to racism, and understanding that kind of stuff make one more understanding in how to deal with it. And that is what I'm trying to. I don't take the offense a lot of people take. Racism is a big thing when it comes to economics and a lot of these other issues, because it is used as a tool. I fight racism as the tool, but as the human portion about it, I work with it. In other words, I don't hold grudges or anything of that on the human side of it. You have to work with it. Now, on the economic side, I am vicious when it comes to white supremacy, because white supremacy has very little to do with white people in general. And I've spoken about that in other things as well. You know, white supremacy fools white people more than anybody else. You know, and Lyndon Johnson alluded to some of that in some of the statements that he's made, but that's not the subject of this show today, so I'll leave that for another time. But anyhow, let's go to Michael again. This is going to force the issue of single-payer Medicare. You're absolutely right. I like the article that you put there too, Michael. Raise the tax from 0 to a penny, problem solved. Yeah, but you know what? I don't want it to be solved. I want these guys to come out and have to fight it. Previous government shutdowns are something both Democrats and Republicans usually blame on the other side for. Despite that, it's invariably Republicans at fault for trying to push some lunacy that would harm. Okay. The vast majority of liberals and progressives support single payer. Yes, they do. I'm going through kind of fast because we're running out of time. Privatized healthcare. Privatized healthcare can only compete with socialized national government healthcare by denying coverage. That is a magical thing that you just said, dear Mike. Michael, that is one that we have to frame. Okay? And when I say that, I don't know if people understand the depth of that statement. And actually, let me read it again. Privatized healthcare can only compete with socialized national government healthcare by denying coverage to sick and dying. That's not good for the people. And the reason I love that particular way of framing it is people can understand that. The ways to lower healthcare costs, collectively bargain for cheaper rates. That is very true. All right, let me see what else I've got here. If any more showed up. You know, I always have problems reading with this particular baby here. All right, let's see what we got here. I was hoping to have some of my conservatives chime in on this particular issue, because, and you know what I really would like? I would really like some of my conservative not only to chime in, but to call in, because that would make a huge difference. But anyway, folks, I'm at the end of the show. So before I go, I need to go ahead and put my plug one more time. Please remember, this is a progressive show. As a progressive show, we do need your support. Progressive media does not get the support that it really, really needs to remain viable. And if I don't know if you remember, Air America Radio went under. All these other types of programs went under. Now, they paid Al Franken a lot of money. They paid Rachel Maddow and a whole lot of money. In the case of programs like Politics Done Right and Majority Report, that's not how we decided to do it. The different way, and the different way is to ask subscribers to give pennies. Give us pennies. We don't try, and you know, this none of us are making a killing doing this, and actually not at all. But in our case, we're just starting to do the subscription-based model, because our advertising model finally lost 90% of its value when they decided to change the Google and Facebook algorithm. At first, we could do this for free. We can no longer do this for free. So what we do is we ask for people to subscribe, people that see the benefit in what we do, people that know that what we're providing is an important benefit, a part of the discourse to ensure that the progressive side has sustenance, that the progressive side has people who are out there doing the job to make sure other folks get the message. Because the right, with the amount of monies that they have, with the amount of penetration that they have in the market, they are unstoppable, and the only way to stop them is what we're doing here. As a token of appreciation, you know, you can have a bumper sticker, a Politics Done Right bumper sticker. We also have the book, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. Go sign up, go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right and check this out. Check out the options that we have. Please also remember that How to Make America Utopia. That's a book that I'm currently writing. Chapter 1 is written. It's online already. If you subscribe, you can actually go read Chapter 1. And I'm working on Chapter 2, which is about indoctrination. And as soon as Chapter 2 comes out, those people who are subscribers can read it. By the way, we have a group that is not very active right now, but will be active as more chapters come in, I'm pretty sure. That group is where you can talk. You can say, hey, would you put this in the book? Or I have this statement I want to get in the book, or whatever. And if it's something that makes it in the book with your permission, we'll cite you, put it in the book and cite you that it's in the book. So again, this is just a token of appreciation, right? For saying thank you for supporting progressive media to ensure that the message gets to thousands. We'll do our part. There are other folks attempting to do this. 2019 is going to be different. I'm going to be working with other people as well, trying to get this model out. We're trying to get a whole lot of people out there doing this kind of work, trying to keep our own base on an economical basis, because we cannot compete with the Fox News and the right-wing AM radio stations and all. We can't compete there. So we have to do it differently. And the model that we're creating here is a subscription model where enough people support particular entities. I'm looking for support for Politics Done Right. Enough people support this particular entity that says this messenger is going to be out there. You guys see the work that I do. You've seen the interviews with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You've seen the interview with all the different personalities at Netroots Nation, at the march in Washington that I've been to, in Oregon, and all these other places, to keep the message going and to ensure that we start and continue to promote the message. So what I ask you to do is to please subscribe to the program at patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Subscribe. It's very inexpensive, and we have a little bunch of goodies that you can sign up for. And or you can also go to politicsdoneright.com and support us as well. So that's what I ask. It's for a good cause, and we are reliable, a reliable presence in the liberal space, in the progressive space. And we also give you a window in that space. So please go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know what? We are out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.